welcome back, and thanks for watching. In this video we're going to take a look at the best and most efficient way to import photographs into your system and into the Lightroom catalogue. And this video was suggested by my good mate Wayne in Melbourne, so thanks Wayne, and we'll dive in now and take a look at what I think is the most efficient way to handle your photographs. Now you might wonder why we need to make a video about how to import photographs into our system and into the catalogue. Because if you've been using Lightroom for a while, you've probably got a system in place that works for you. But in talking to a number of friends and colleagues, I've found that people have a number of different ways of importing, and some of them are just downright weird and a lot of hard work. So I thought it's appropriate now to have a look at the most efficient way to do this. For instance, I have a friend who goes on a photo shoot, connects his camera to his computer, but then just selects some of the photographs to import. And my contention is that you can't really assess a photograph until you've got it on the big screen. Looking at it on the back of the camera really doesn't give you a clear idea of whether the photograph is worth processing or not. And you may inadvertently miss out on some real gems if you just selectively import. And other people I know don't even use the Lightroom import dialog. They copy them using Windows Explorer or the equivalent on their Mac, and then go and have trouble finding where their photographs are and add them to the catalogue. So this way is the simplest and most efficient way, and this is the way I suggest that you ought to think about using for your own photographs. Now the first thing we need to do before we even think about importing photographs is to set up a file structure on your computer's hard drive so that you can readily access the photographs. Now on this computer I have a separate hard drive that contains all of my data, all of the program files are on the C drive, and all of my photographs and other things are on this hard drive, volume D. Now initially what I've done is I've set up a master folder, and in this case I've called it Michael's Images. And if your name's John, you'd call it John's Images or something appropriate. And don't call it My Pictures, because it's similar to a folder that's already existing on a Windows machine, and you want to be sure that you're looking at the right folder. So having established your main folder, then what I would do is for each photo shoot or event or trip or whatever you're going to import, is create a subfolder within that master folder that will contain all the photographs from that event. And that's an easy way to do a simple sort of your photographs without having to resort to using any of the filter tools in Lightroom. You can immediately go to the particular folder. For instance, if I went on a trip, I would go and put a folder in place for that trip, and then it's easy for me to locate those photographs without having to do any further sorting. So the first thing is to make sure you've got a file structure in place ready to handle the new photographs as you import them. So having done that and connecting our camera or our card reader to the computer, we would go to the import panel in Lightroom. And if you're going to use Lightroom, why would you bother importing via Windows Explorer or some other system? It's just going to make extra work for yourself. So here we are in the import dialog, and if we go to the left hand side, this is where the source of the photographs is going to be, and you can see that I've got various different hard drives connected to this computer, and here's the card reader, and it's got a subfolder called DCIM, which is where all the Nikon files go. And so we've got a number of photographs. I just took a few out the back door a minute ago just as an example, and so they're automatically highlighted. So this is where we start to use the power of Lightroom to make our life easy for ourselves. So with our card reader or camera located on the import dialog, the next thing to do is just make sure that if you've got folders within folders on your card reader, for instance, some Canon cameras I think put photos into different folders for different days, and if you don't have this box ticked, you may not see all of the photographs within the folder that contains your photograph. So that's just a little trick. Make sure that you are looking at all folders within the card reader or device that you're looking at. So having done that, we've now got preview in the center panel, and you can choose here to either uncheck them all, which means you're not going to import any, check them all, which means all of them, or if we go back to uncheck, we can choose selectively. But as I said earlier, I would always import all of the photographs so that I can at least view them on the big screen, and then decide if I really don't want that photograph. It's a simple matter to delete it. So let's just go back and check all. And the next thing that we need to look at is be very careful about your options on the middle section here. We've got several options. We can copy it as a DNG. We can just copy the file. We can move the file from one location to another one, or you can just simply add them to the catalog in their existing location. So if you're connecting an external hard drive to your computer that contains photographs that you don't want to copy into the main location, but you want to access them, you would just use the add option and leave them where they are. Now, one little caveat that Adobe are very keen on trying to convince people to copy or to convert their raw files into the DNG, digital negative format. But one thing to remember is that converting to a DNG, you're going to at least triple the size of the file. Because of the way the DNG format works, it's a much larger file format. So if you're concerned at all about the amount of space you have on your computer, converting to DNGs is going to massively increase the size of your storage that you're going to need. And I mean, there's many schools of thought on this as well, but I don't think there's any need to convert to DNG. I would simply copy my files. And then the next step is to determine where you're going to put them. So having done these couple of checks, this is not really much different from what you would do if you're copying using Windows Explorer or similar. But now when we start to look at where we're going to put the photographs and what we're going to do with them, this is where the power of Lightroom really takes over. So on the right hand side, we now get to look at where are we going to put them. Now by default, because Lightroom and Windows get a bit carried away, it seems to default to want to put it into a pictures folder, which I never use. I keep all of my photographs on a separate drive away from the operating system, just as a means of insurance. If anything ever goes wrong or your system gets corrupted, all of your files are safely stored on a separate device. So first thing to do is to determine where you're going to send them. So in this case, it thinks it wants to go there, but no, by clicking on this location, it opens up a dialog box, and of course, no, I want to go to another destination, and it will open up a Windows Explorer or Finder panel, and here you can navigate to where you want to put them. Now, they're all on the D drive, Michael's Images, and you'll see that there's lots and lots of folders there. And so in this instance, I would just right mouse click here and create a new folder, and I'm going to call this one test because this is not something I'm going to really want to hang on to. So I call that test, and I say, okay, I've made that folder, that's the one I want to take it to. So you can see here it's now going to the D drive and to that folder. So that's the first step. Now we have other options, and firstly we can come down here in the file handling section and we can look at a couple of options. Now firstly, we can look at the different previews that we can build. We can build a small preview, an embedded preview, a standard, or a one-to-one preview. Now, bearing in mind, if you go to a one-to-one preview, that fully renders the file, and it's going to take quite a long time to import and add them to the catalog. So I would tend to stick with just leave it to a standard preview. And you also have an option to build a smart preview, and that is a file that you can then synchronize with a mobile device if you want to look at processing away from your main computer. I never do that because I think that if you're going to be doing some serious editing work on your photographs, you need to be working in a controlled environment. So sitting outside in the sun trying to work on a tablet device, you're not really going to be able to make a reasonable assessment. But for some people, they're quite happy to do that. So if that's your forte, by all means build a smart preview, and that will then synchronize with your other devices. Now, a couple of other important things to look at is that if you don't reformat your memory card each time you import photographs, you could end up with bringing in duplicates of photographs and ending up with a real mess. So it's important then to think about avoiding suspected duplicates. Now, these of course are all new photographs, so none of these are going to appear as duplicates, and so that's not a real issue. Now, the next thing we can do on the fly, and this is speeds up our operation a lot of the time, is that we can make a second copy on the fly. And what I do is I have another backup device, and I can then, as I import them into my main hard drive, I can simultaneously create a backup onto an external hard drive. So that's an extra insurance policy to ensure that you're not losing any photographs. And this works really well, particularly if you're traveling and you're downloading on a daily basis onto a laptop. And if you have an external hard drive connected, you can, on the fly, make 2 copies of the file straight away, and you've got an insurance policy in place. So the same thing would happen here. Now that I'm opted to make a second copy, I'm going to click on that description, and it will take me to, I use a Drobo machine, which unfortunately are now obsolete, but my machine, touch wood, is still working fine. And I have a folder here that matches or duplicates my main hard drive. And let's just have a look at those. I've got all these folders in place, so I would just do the same thing. Right mouse click, make a new folder, and I think I called that one test. And just one thing to make sure that if you're doing this and making a second copy on the fly, make sure you create a folder with exactly the same file name, because if not, the system, when you do your backups, it might think that the folder on your main drive is not existing on your backup drive because it's got a different name, and it will create a duplicate. So just make sure that when you create that second location, that you give it exactly the same name. So having done that, that's the folder I want. So I'm now going to be importing into my D drive into a particular folder, and I'm going to make a second copy on the fly to a different hard drive into a folder with the same name. So we've now determined where we're going to put our photographs. We're making a duplicate. We're checking that we're not making duplicate files. We're making a backup. And further down here, we have another option. We can add it to a collection as we go. Now, I don't ever use this because when you import a series of photographs into the catalogue, it will always appear as the latest import in your library folder anyway, so that you can access just the files that you've imported. Even if they're going into a folder that already has photographs in them, you will see by default the previous import. So I don't tend to use that, but you certainly could. And then moving down, we've got some further options that will really help you along the way. Now, some people like to rename their files away from the default name that the camera gives the image file. And you know, if you tick this box, you can use a various template, you can add extensions, you can do whatever you like with it. And some people like to do that. I don't personally see the need to do that because I'm already putting each of my photo shoots into a separate folder, and over the years I've had different models of camera, and some of them have ended up with the same file name because it just gives my custom prefix plus a number, but because they're in different folders, I'm not going to get them confused. And of course we also have the metadata that tells me when the file was created and so forth. So but I know a lot of people like to rename their files on the fly, and of course you can do that. So there's the option there, and that can certainly be done. And then of course we get to another section that's really helpful for those of people that, for instance, might want to apply a standard set of processing on the fly, so that you're not going through and replicating the processing steps on every single photo. We can come here and apply during import. We can apply some develop settings. Now, if you click on this box here, it will open up. Now, by default, I don't use any, but we can go in here and there's a whole lot of presets that come with Lightroom. Now, sometimes, for instance, you might have a particular photo shoot that you're using, and you want to apply a particular set of presets to, and here's where you can choose them. Or of course you can go to your user presets, which is ones that you create yourself, and of course you can create presets for any particular use, and there's a whole bunch here that are actually, some I've made myself, some that I've been given from other people. For instance, if you typically always apply, let's just go back to that, always apply a certain amount of clarity and vibrance to a photograph as a default standard, you could certainly do that. And then of course you can look at what you do with the metadata. If you want to add anything to that, you can add extra bits or preset metadata. I leave that alone. And we come then to the vexed question of keywords. Now, over the years, we've had many interesting discussions with friends and colleagues about the use of keywords in the Lightroom catalog. I have to confess, I don't use keywords. They weren't a thing really when I first started using Lightroom at version 1.0, way back probably 15 years ago. And I found that I didn't really need them. My system of creating a subfolder for each photo shoot gives me a way of essentially giving a keyword to a group of photographs. But on the other hand, I know lots of other photographers that swear blind by using keywords on their photographs. Now the problem is here, if you wanted to apply keywords to a whole group of photographs, they're all going to have the same keyword. So for instance, if you'd taken all of these photographs on a particular holiday, you could apply a keyword that said holiday, let's say June 2025, 2025, and every photograph would have that keyword applied to it. And that might be of use to you, but of course in different instances you might want to put a different keyword on individual photos, so you will have to do that manually when you get back into the import after they've all been added to the catalog. So there's the option, you can certainly use that there. And now at the bottom here we get down to a folder that or a section that just confirms the destination of where you're going to go. Now of course you can see here that at the destination that you've already chosen up here at the top, you can then decide if you want to add a subfolder at the time that you bring the photographs in. I choose not to do that. Now you'll see here that they're not going to the C drive, so we can close that up. We're going to the D drive, and if we scroll all the way down here, it lists all the folders on your D drive, and yes, it's going to a folder called test, and then you can see there that it'll go to, if I look down at the Drobo, it'll also show that as being where the backups are going. So let's just close that up because that's quite a big section. And then once you've done all that, you're pretty much right to go, so that then you know where they're going, what you're going to do with the files as they are imported, and you just then have to click the import button and Lightroom will do its magic. It will create the second version on the fly, and it will bring the photographs in, create those standard thumbnails. Now these are pretty rubbishy photographs, I'm not going to bother keeping them. But as it comes into the catalog, of course, the files are imported, copied, and added to the catalog. If we scroll all the way up to the beginning, you'll see here that by default it's showing you the previous import. So had I elected to put these photographs into a folder that already existed and had photographs in it, I would only be seeing the new photographs that have been added. And I would then have to, let's right mouse click and say, go to the folder in the library, and it will take me down to the folder called test. And here we are, we've got a pretty ordinary photograph that we've just created or just imported. So we've got our photographs into the catalogue, they've been copied. Let's just check that we've actually applied that processing on the fly. So if we go to the develop panel and pick one of these, you can see here that I've actually added a bit of vibrance, texture and clarity to each photograph on import, and then I can proceed from there with whatever other processing I want to do. So it might seem a little bit tedious to go through all those steps at the beginning, but over time it will save you a lot of hassle. You won't lose photographs and you won't wonder where they've gone, because you can see each of those, and particularly when you go back to the library, you can always go back and look at that. Where did they end up going? Well, look at your previous import, and you can then right mouse click and locate the folder, and if you've inadvertently put them in an incorrect folder, you can always find them and then drag them via Lightroom into the correct location. So I hope that's all been useful. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you again soon.